Hello and welcome to a new episode of Race Recap, where we provide you with all the key insights and crucial information from each weekend's feeder series action. My name's Thomas Groves, and this week on Race Recap, we're covering all the action from the Iberian Peninsula, as the Spanish F4 season got underway this weekend with a trio of races at the Circuit Ricardo Tormo, and who better to tell us all about it than feeder series Dario, reporter of the series, as we give a warm welcome to the podcast, Seb Tirado. How you doing, Seb?
I'm doing great. I think it's been a good weekend of racing in Valencia. And yeah, excited to be here to talk about it.
Awesome. Well, we know that Spain has one of the most active feeder series schedules in the junior ladder, and indeed, many of the competitors of this year's Spanish F4 season previously contested the Spanish Winter Championship in the Eurocup 3 and 4 series earlier this year in pretty much similar machinery. And indeed, the 2026 Formula Eurocup 4 champion Noah Montero was here with Campos Racing alongside title rivals Andrei Petrovic and Nathan Tai. With their track record this year, they've been so good in the earlier series. How do you feel those results translated well into this first weekend of the new full Spanish F4 season?
Well, for the reigning Winter Series champion Noah Montero, it's been a good weekend, I would say. He's got a hat trick of third places, one of which inherited after Vivek Kantan's 15 seconds worth of penalties in the first race. And in terms of Andrei Petrovic, well, it started all right, and then in race two, it ended a lot quicker than I think he would have wanted it to, considering the opening lap crash he had, along with Vivek Kanthan and some others. And in terms of Nathan Tai as well, he had points results during the weekend, but he probably would have wanted a little bit more out of this weekend, especially considering the performances he put in the Spanish Winter Championship.
Well, yeah, I think we definitely saw a bit of a trend there, especially with like the Griffin guys doing really well in their first race. Of course, we know they're triple back-to-back champions of this series in drivers and teams. They're going for a fourth, and I'd suggest they're looking likely to get that fourth with the likes of Canthan and Montero having both had really, really strong weekends across the three races of Saturday and Sunday. Now, Seb, as with any feeder series season opener, we've of course got a whole new field of rookies to talk about, to look at, to evaluate, and of course to see what they can do on the junior circuit. Were there any that particularly stood out to you in this first weekend of Spanish F4?
Well, I think it would be completely remiss to not mention Rocco Coronel, because not only has he taken 2 wins this weekend and a 4th place, he leaves Valencia as the championship leader. It's his first full year in single seaters, and after his performances in Formula Winter Series and his, one could say, misfortune in the Spanish Winter Championship, it's a pretty good place to be at the very start of the season, leaving Valencia at the very top of the standings. And of course, we have to talk about Alex Pinheiro as well for Technicar. 2 second places in Valencia for a team who was not usually at the front of the field. Yes, we saw Andrei Petrovic with T-Code being a surprise front runner in the Spanish Winter Championship. But, one's an anomaly, two's a trend. So if Alex Pinheiro could put in these good performances as well, I think Technicar and T-Code, with this evidence of good performances, they could be some dark horses to be surprise front runners once again in the main season. And lastly as well, Boris Leishman, the Polish driver as well. Points finishes and then 2nd place in the final race of the weekend. He scored a win in the Winter Series, so we know he has that front running pace and talent, and he's shown that once again in Valencia.
And yeah, great for Pineda too to get a podium in the first weekend of the new Spanish F4 season. But if we look at the other end of the scale, drivers who may have had a slightly less fortunate weekend, I think the one driver that stands out to me is Vivek Kanthan. He, of course, won race 1 on the road. A penalty dropped him down to 10th and then was involved in the first lap crash in race 2, Seb. But what positives would you take out this weekend if you were Vivek, and just give us a bit of a overall review of how he performed, in those situations, and also in the likes of race 3, where of course he found himself without such troubles.
Yeah, well, luckily we can say that he will keep his win from race 3, so we can leave the weekend with that win under his belt. But yeah, I mean, yes, he was demoted down to 10th in the first race, and he was involved in that very scary opening lap crash with Alex Pinheiro in race 2. But overall, he's proven that he has that front running pace. He's proven that his results in the Spanish Winter Championship, that he's learned from it. He's learned especially from now it's his second year in Spanish F4, he now has that potential to challenge for a title against his teammate and the rest of the field for this season. So yeah, race 2 didn't really go the way he would have wanted it to, but he leaves Valencia knowing that he can win races. And as long as no penalties come his way post-race, he can keep said victories.
Indeed. Now, you mentioned the title fight there. I want to know, are there any drivers you're perhaps, backing or feeling like they could be the one to go all the way and claim the title or be in the hunt for the title when we head to Barcelona in October for the final round of the championship?
Well, it would be fairly obvious to say no Montero, considering he is the reigning Winter Series champion. And of course, Griffin Call by Campos, they are a very strong operation. Same with MP Motorsport as well. They're from the powerhouses of Spanish F4. I would say there's 3 names in my mind that are No Montero, Vivek Cantan, and Rocco Coronel. They've all shown amazing pace so far this year in 2026. And yeah, I think those are the 3 main names we should be looking out for the rest of the season. But, we've still got 6 more rounds. It's a long season. Anything can happen. So we just have to see.
Well, I want to throw in one of my own, if that's all right. Alex Pineda, I think we can see some great things from him this season, given how he's performed over the first weekend. He may not be in the favoured outfit of Griffin by Campos, but I think we can definitely see some good stuff from him later on in the season. It'll be interesting to see how he develops, the hometown hero, the Spanish um, driver in his home series, trying to fly the flag for his home country. Well, of course, there's far more than just Spanish F4 on this weekend. There's also in F4 Europe. There was the Central European zone of F4, and here to tell us more about it is our very own Marco Albertini.
The Formula 4 Central European Zone Championship came back into action at the Red Bull Ring. An increased number of entries meant the field had to be split in 2 groups for Saturday's 2 qualifying sessions, in which Till Bornstein and Max Carhan qualified on pole, with Bornstein taking poles for races 1 and 3 and Carhan taking pole for race 2. Bornstein led the way at the start of the weekend by taking a dominant lights of flag win by holding off his teammate Max Carhan to take his first ever F4 CEZ win as David Walter joined him on the podium. In race 2, Carhan was on pole but was immediately overtaken by Leah Weiss at the start, and the duo began exchanging the lead in the following lap. But it was the German who eventually came out on top and held off every single attack that Carhan gave him to take his first ever win in F4 competition, as the Crown Motorsport car of Simon Regenmacher joined him on the podium. Bornstein was on pole for race 3 and was briefly overtaken by Leah Weiss at the start, but was able to get the lead back and eventually lead all the laps to take what would have been his second win of the weekend until a 5-second penalty came his way and gave the win to David Walter, as Bornstein slipped to second and Leah Weiss finished third. Bornstein was on pole for the 4th race of the weekend after scoring the most amount of points up until then. But it was David Walter who once again was the man to beat in that race, who went from third to first in a matter of laps and never looked back, as he took his second win of the weekend despite 2 red flags, with the last one effectively ending the race prematurely to take his second win of the season ahead of Leah Weiss and Max Carhan. Walter now leads the point standings heading into the Salzburg ring by 5 points over Leah Weiss and 10 over Max Carhan.
Great stuff from Marco there. And a reminder, you can also check out our Central European F4 season guide brought to you by Feeder Series on our website, written by our very own Maciek. And of course, you can check out Seb's own Feeder Series season guide for Spanish F4. But I'm going to let you in on a little Feeder Series secret now, because there's somebody who's sat in on every single conversation we've had on Race Recap, who's been on every part of every episode, but they've never been seen on camera and you never heard their voice. Well, that's changing today, because over in the States, there were 3 series running simultaneously this weekend. And here to tell us more about it is our very own Feeder Series Race Recap producer for a podcast debut. It's Cliona. Take it away.
Thanks, Thomas. Starting with Formula Regional Americas, where Brady Golan took victory in the first race of the weekend at NOLA Motorsports Park out of championship returnee Christian Bogle and rookie Cooper Shipman. Race 2 saw Evagoras Papasovos run out victorious with Shipman in second and Kekai Huanio in third. Shipman then completed his hat-trick of podiums with a win in the final race of the weekend. He was joined by Juanio and Papastabas on the rostrum and leads the standings on 58 points. In F4 US, Caleb Campbell swept the weekend, winning all 3 races in Avondale. He was joined by Zach Foury and Gaston Irazu on the podium in race 1, Foury and Cole Medeiros in race 2, and finally by Foury and Irazu once again in the final race of the season opener. Finally, to the Ligier Junior Formula Championship, where Beckham Jessir did the double in the Gen 1 class before rookie Lazaro Bainotti came out on top in race 3. Meanwhile, in the Gen 2 class, it was Edward Kennedy who dominated, winning all 3 races in the opening round of the championship.
Great to hear from Cliona there after 4 episodes of producing. Well, she's now stepped into her podcast debut. Well, that's all from the stateside action and from us here on Race Recap. Before we go, a reminder, you can follow us on our website at feederseries.net and our extensive social platform. And a huge thank you to Seb for joining us today, to Marco for lending us his Central European F4 insights, and to Cliona for providing her voice notes and producing the podcast as well. If you have enjoyed this episode, please don't hesitate to leave a like, review, comment or follow to stay up to date with all things Feeder Series. But for now, my name has been Thomas Groves. You've been listening to Race Recap, brought to you by Feeder Series, and make sure to tune back in on Thursday for another episode of Feeder Focus. Bye for now.